body, it's the facts we bring, yeah. Whoa, yeah. Whoa, Uncles ting, tis an uncle's ting. Pull up on the body, it's the facts we bring, yeah. Whoa, yeah. Whoa.
Welcome back to the Unkles Podcast, everyone. Tonight, I'm joined by a former guest, actually from episode 59. It's Peter Aitsi, who's back on again to join us. My dad, my father. Back then, we did part one, where we touched on his early life from where he was born and raised up until high school. And I think the last topic we touched on was about sport in high school. So we've got him back on to talk about his life after school and his career up until now. So, Dad, thank you for hopping on the Uncles and joining us tonight.
Good. Thank you very much, Richard, for the opportunity to come back and share a little bit more.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about tonight, but we always talk about this on the Uncles, and it's our word of the week. So I thought I'd throw it to you before we dive into things, but what's one word that sort of highlights your last week?
Oh, last week, I think it'd be perseverance. There's a lot of things that happened, particularly since the independence celebrations, a lot of activity, and you do need to be persistent and focused on your goals in order for you to be able to achieve them. So perseverance is my word.
That's a great word, and I definitely need a bit of perseverance, especially during this time of the year. It's always busy once you finish June, July, and leading into Christmas, especially being in sales. This is the time when a lot of stuff gets done. Everyone sets their budgets, and you need to have a bit of perseverance to close those deals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So look, let's get into it. I'm sure a lot of our followers watched episode 59, and they got a taste of your life growing up as from when you were young up until your teenage years. But now we have the opportunity to discuss, I guess, some of the more, your career. So early career, moving into where you're at now. And the first one I'd like to touch on, I guess, is, your transition from Melbourne. So you went to high school in Melbourne and then coming back to PNG. You were in Melbourne for quite a few years, and I can imagine that itself would have been a bit of a culture shock going back home after being away for so long.
Yeah, look, it was, Richard. Always difficult sort of transitioning between two countries, and particularly when you've got significant differences in those countries. As we know, going back home, there's always perhaps not the development that takes place in Western countries, and so it's a lot harder in terms of life, and you need to be able to be adaptable in order for you to try and make a living within developing countries. So that's probably the biggest challenge. You come from a developed country and we go home and we face the challenges that we do with lack of infrastructure, lack of opportunity sometimes. And so that causes somebody to really work much harder to achieve the things they do.
Yeah, and it would have been quite confronting for you, trying to assert yourself back into, I guess, life back there as well. What was one of the first jobs that you had when you first landed back in Port Moresby?
Yeah, look, I think I landed home 18 years of age with a suitcase, and that's pretty much all we had. At the time, your grandfather, my father, had essentially been retrenched and was living in the village. So there was really only myself and my older sister, your Auntie Solange. And so it was really the two of us that then had to find places to live because our father wasn't there. So between the two of us, we'd live with our uncle, and then eventually I then moved to Girahu, where I lived with a friend of your grandfather, a family from Kainantu, and so they took me in, and I lived there for pretty much a year. and Auntie Solange went on to live at the hostel. So I think that sort of, was a difficult period. But thankfully, after about 6 months of being unemployed, I was able to secure a job with the Bank of South Pacific, where I started as what was initially then a batch clerk, which is a very junior role. And that was the beginnings of my career, working in the bank and learning banking and finance, the beginnings of my career.
Yeah, wow. And look, like a lot of us, you get that first job, and there are lots of I guess nerves, emotions that are running through your mind, in the first few weeks, months. How am I going to go? But what sort of skills or what sort of mindset from that period shaped you to, I guess, be the person you are today?
Look, I think my training in banking and finance, I think, really had been the foundation of my own sort of expertise and experience that I've gathered along the way. The banking industry really teaches you good discipline because it teaches you how to handle finances. It teaches you how the value of money, but also how money then flows into the economy, which is able to then generate business, and then those businesses then in turn are able to employ people, and as a result, all of that comes together to be able to underpin the growth within the economy. So it is. I mean, it's a very significant and important part of a country's development. So I think those early years, being trained and exposed to this industry, have really underpinned the success that I've had in my career.
And during that time, those early days, were there any sort of mentors for you at BSP or outside of that as well, or were you sort of just figuring it out by yourself?
Well, look, in the early days, there were very few Papua New Guineans in the senior levels of the bank, in any bank, to be honest, not only Bank of South Pacific at the time. We had ANZ, we had Westpac. Back then we had PNGFM, Indo-Suez Finance, and I think there may have been one other bank, but really there was no senior Papua New Guineans. I suppose the first person that started to make some inroads or some success in terms of executive and senior levels was Mr. Izakali Tareka. And so Izakali was my first manager at Port Moresby branch of the Bank of South Pacific. So in terms of a mentor, he probably would have been the first because obviously he was a Papua New Guinean, and we, the juniors within the bank, looked up to him as somebody who set the benchmark in terms of what could be achieved.
Okay. And I guess moving on from there, you landed your first managerial role with Brian Bell Group, Beltec. What did that sort of first taste of frontline leadership in PNG teach you about customers, teams, and accountability?
Well, I think there was a step before that, and after sort of spending 6 years in the bank and getting to a reasonable senior position within the bank, I decided to sort of start our own business, and I went into partnership with a number of my friends, and we started to do home deliveries as a business within Port Moresby. So we ran this for about 18 months, and we were undercapitalised, but we were able to sort of sustain ourselves for 18 months. But at the end of that, we ran out of money, and we had some debt as well. Yeah. So we had to get back and try and find some work to be able to pay these debts off. Wow. And so that's what led me to essentially put out my CV, and I had been accepted by Chevron at the time as a project accountant, but it was posted to Kutubu at the time. And so I spent 6 weeks at Chevron, and then Brian Bell responded to my CV and said, Peter, we want you to join us. And so I then said, well, Brian Bell's a fairly significant company, so I took up a position as sales manager with Beltec Chemicals. And that for me, I think was a real another step in terms of the progression of my career, because I was able to take the banking and finance experience and what I'd been exposed to there in terms of the training that I'd received there, and now start to apply sales and that along with my sales and marketing skills that I was exposed through the Brian Bell Group. Mm-hmm. And so I think the Brian Bell company I was fortunate to join the Brian Bell company. It allowed me to manage a small group of sales and marketing people. So it allowed me at the age of 24 to really start to manage people within a workforce. I reported to the general manager at the time, so involved with, marketing, planning of the kind of inventory that we needed, the logistics to support the inventory in terms of securing clients, planning their orders, transportation of their orders, the actual in-field use of those chemicals, and then the reports that come through in terms of just making sure that the chemicals were essentially being used in the proper way. So that's a whole cycle of managing a client, and it was a great combination of having the finance and the banking and finance experience, mm-hmm. as well as the sales and marketing components coming together.
Yeah, wow. Let's that just brought me to another. I want to take a step back because just thinking about how you quickly got that opportunity with Brian Bell Group, Beltec, leadership position. How, when you first landed in Moresby, so you were coming straight out of high school with sort of no, I guess, degree or graduate diploma to use. What would have been going through your head at that time, and how did you actually get that first opportunity with BSB?
Yeah, look, back then it was a little different, if you like. There wasn't a lot of jobs around, but I think importantly I got the opportunity with the bank because I think it was I think the banking industry, if you'd like, were one of the major sort of sectors within our economy, and so there was opportunity there for people that have got some sort of ability to then join them and to grow within them. When I left high school, as I was 18 years of age, no experience, high school sort of high school qualification, yep. And then when I joined the bank, I was able to then go through the what they call an accelerated development program within the bank, which then allowed me to sort of go through the PNG Bankers Institute, and look at be able to get a certificate in various certificates in banking banking practice, business law, accounting, and those are the kinds of I suppose opportunities that come that I was fortunate to receive as I went through my my time at the Bank of South Pacific.
Yeah, you do make it sound easy, but I'm sure there would have been a lot of hard work and putting yourself in the right opportunity at the right time to make sure that you're getting those opportunities. But fast forward back to Beltec Chemicals, and from there, because that's when I had sort of come into your life, and I remember a lot of my early days being at the PNGFM office, and you spent 14 years of your life there as general manager. And tell us about how you went from Brian Bell Group to landing the opportunity at PNGFM. Was there anything else in the middle there as well?
Yeah, look, from Beltec to PNGFM, it was a transition from Beltec to PNGFM. I had spent 3 years at Beltec, so as I mentioned, as sales manager at Beltec. A common link is once again Mr. Izakali Tareka. So he had, by chance, met up with a gentleman out of Fiji, a gentleman by the name of William Parkinson. And William had set up a radio station and a radio network in Fiji 10 years previously. And Kelly had had some ideas about setting up a radio station in Port Moresby. And so the two of them, by chance, met, and this idea was hatched in terms of setting up a radio company in PNG. I was working at Beltec at the time as sales manager, and when both of them sort of started to think about who they could approach to take on what was then the director of sales role, or essentially the director of sales with PNGFM, my name was mentioned as a person that may be suitable. And so I was approached by Kelly, and he said, "Look, I'd like you to meet this gentleman, a fellow by the name of William Parkinson." I had no idea who William was, and so we had a meeting at one of the smaller hotels in Port Moresby called the Ambers Inn. It doesn't exist anymore, but it's called the Ambers Inn. So around the pool, I met this gentleman, and William started to sort of tell me about the plans of building this radio station. And so when I heard it, I said, "Oh, look, I think I'm okay. I'll stay at Beltec." And then they persisted. Once again, the term perseverance.
Yeah.
They persisted, and I eventually decided to then join them. So I was the second person recruited. The first was the general manager at the time, Mr. Mark Rogers, and the second was myself as the director of sales. So between Mark and myself, with the help of William, we then set up what is now PNGFM. And that is 31 years ago now.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of my childhood memories were in that office in town. It was funny when we did our pop-up in Port Moresby, and I went and Shaz was there, she's now the GM.
Correct.
Yeah. We were reflecting on a lot of the times when I'd just be running amok in the office and trying to annoy people or take the bins out to earn some little pocket money. So that was a really good time. But from director of sales, you worked your way up to general manager, and you held that position for quite some time there. But seeing what PNGFM has, what it was from when I was younger to what it is now, and the amount of I'd say coverage they have over social media pages, channels. And a funny thing was, I didn't even know PNG Housebung was PNGFM until I went back and spoke to the guys. But I can see the growth, and I wanted to sort of ask you as well about how did you sort of build that, and what were the main things that got PNGFM from, I guess, from a small company to what it is now?
Well, look, there's been a lot of development within PNGFM. When we first started back in 1994, there was only the one radio station, that was Now FM. And then by 97, we added Yumi FM. And in the early 2000s, we added Legend FM. And then in between, we then set up what was then the first real event company for Papua New Guinea, which is Total Event Company. And then in between, our online presence in terms of what was then a web presence initially, and then it went on to PNG Village, which is now evolved into PNG Housebong. But the core of it is around, sort of understanding your audience, your market, and creating a product that is able to essentially attract your listenership, which then becomes your audience on the different platforms. As with every product, it really is about, the number of purchases or the number of customers that come to your door. And the beauty of electronic media is that it can be received anywhere nowadays, on your mobile phone, via radio receivers, via television, online. And so it's not a physical product, but it is very much a product because, ultimately what you're generating is content, Content can be in various forms. It can be, stories. It can be music. It can be theatre. All kinds of things that you can produce in terms of content. But I think the real significant value or the real significant strength that PNGFM has is its audience reach. And so as a result, that has allowed it to grow as big as it has become, and it continues to sort of to increase that audience year on year. So it has become a very strong media brand. Yumi FM particularly continues to rate as the Papua New Guinea's most listened to media in the country. So I think that's a recognition of the work that's gone in.
Yeah, I think it's a really special company because not only, a lot of other companies, you come up with a good idea and then you're successful for a few years, but you don't see the opportunity to grow, and then you can die off. Whereas I think what PNGFM has done is, like you said, when you stepped out all the different branches of the company now with Now FM, Yumi FM, Legend FM, and then PNG Houseboom, but Total Events Company in the middle there as well, has allowed the PNGFM as a whole to grow, but also keep up to date with the times, because that's the biggest thing. If you don't acclimatize to the way the world is changing, then you're not going to grow as a company. So I think seeing that from the sideline and going back and seeing the offices and speaking to the people there, that was a big takeaway for me. But it would have been hard for you to leave PNGFM after a long time, and I guess what made you make that decision?
Well, look, Richie, yes, it was hard, and the good thing is I'm still involved with PNGFM, and it's been a 30-year journey, and William and Sophie are very close friends of ours, as you know, family friends, and those are lifelong friendships that have come as a result of our partnership, our involvement. So it continues to be part of our lives. It's an organisation that we obviously are very close to and dearly love. And I'm the chairman of the organisation now. So that's the evolution. You sort of start at one end. You're committed to something you believe in. You work hard for that entity, and ultimately, what you do is you create pathways for people. So by the time I was ready to leave in 2008, we'd worked hard to prepare a successor. And that's really the measure, I think, of a good manager and a good leader, is to be able to bring people up underneath you and not be afraid to be replaced, because ultimately that's what that's a measure of your value. Because as we go through, you'll see that at each step of my career, it's always been a conscious choice to leave, because we've done our work in order for us to prepare people underneath you, younger people, to come through, and so you provide a platform for them to stand on and for them to continue the work. And so that's that's sort of the approach we took. So by the time I was ready to leave PNGFM, a young gentleman by the name of Adrian Howe was ready to take over the general manager role.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, our current general manager is Rosemary Botong. And Rosemary has been with the organisation, well in excess of 15 years. Very capable lady, and has become a very good leader of that organisation.
Yes, yeah. So, moving on from PNGFM, there's two companies that I remember. One was GHD, but also AusAid's SPSN, Strong in People, Strong in Nation. So those two companies, you held, PNG country operation manager roles with them. So how, going from sort of general manager of PNGFM to leading countrywide operations for those two companies, what was it like, you know, having to deal with, I guess, an organization as a whole, but also on a countrywide sort of having a countrywide focus. So your teams, your processes, but also dealing with, you know, your investors, stakeholders, but also the government at the same time.
Sure. Yeah, look, I suppose to better describe how that transition took place, I probably do need to point that while I was General Manager of PNGFM, I was also President of the Media Council as a industry body, as a volunteer to that organisation. And I was Secretary for 4 years and then President for, I think, 7 or 8 years. And then around 1999, I was invited by Sir Anthony Siaguru to serve on the TIPNG board. So that started my journey in terms of my work with TIPNG, once again as a volunteer. Both of those organisations caused me to work within the civil society space and caused me to sort of start to understand the impact of the different issues that PNG has to grapple with and the impact of those issues on the community. And so it allowed me to sort of be exposed to development sector within our country, and it allowed me to get an exposure and experience in that particular sector. And so organisations such as GHD, which is primarily an engineering company, a fairly significant engineering company in Australia, but it wanted to develop a arm of its business that would then be able to manage the aid program for various donors within PNG. And so they then approached me with a request to help them set up an office in PNG. And so that caused me, that then gave me, if you like, an opportunity to broaden my experience in that space. And so I agreed to do that, and we then set up the GHD office, and that's still running in PNG. And we started with 2 people. It was myself, a colleague by the name of Vani Ego, and we set up an office in Deloitte Tower, and we started to provide services to the various sort of clients that we were able to secure. So that organisation now, as I said, that was probably 2010. 2010. So that's still operating in PNG, and from my understanding, they're now running one of the Australian government DFAT programs, I think it's the Transport Sector Support Program, which is a significant part of the DFAT program in PNG. So they're still around, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just you explaining how you set up that GHD office. Then just I thought about how the PNGFM office was started as well, with just 3 of you. How did you take anything from that learning with PNGFM and sort of use that with setting up the office for GHD?
Oh, very much so, and actually probably goes back to the Beltec days, because essentially I started the sales office there. There was only probably 1 or 2 at the time. And so by the time I left, we had an office in Lae, Port Moresby, and we started, had a contract to Octedi in terms of supplying Octedi. So, that's the kind of experience that you gather that then places that it then provides you with that understanding of how to set up these types of business structures. So by the time I came to PNGFM, I already had that sort of understanding of the financial sort of, arrangements that need to be set in place. I understood how to run a sales team, and what to do in terms of promoting your products through a proper marketing plan and a marketing program. So they then underpin the work that I did with the various other organisations that came through. But I think the most important lesson that you pick up, and this is the one that some people sort of fail in, is just to understand that every business relies on your workforce, the people within the business. And so really it's about, your ability to attract and retain quality people, to be able to support them with clear sort of training and development programs for them to upskill their own skills. But then most importantly is around the culture that you build within the companies that you create. And that culture really then gives life to that entity, and it allows you to actually set yourself above others, so that at the end of the day, your product and the brand of your company becomes one that people want to buy from or want to associate with.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people on now. This being, we're into the hundreds of our episodes, but a lot of people who work back at home, they tend to say that if you've never lived in PNG or you're not from PNG, you actually don't know how PNG people work, and that's the thing about, I think, relationship building. Just from hearing you speak and saying how the workforce is, it's a very important thing to a business, and how you understand that workforce also comes down to how well you understand the people that live and work there, like Papua New Guineans on the ground. How important is that, knowing the culture versus, say, someone from outside who comes in, has all the skill sets, but doesn't really know the people?
Look, it's very important. And I say this because I think our market in PNG and the business environment in PNG is very challenging. And the examples I use is that, you look at perhaps the Australian market, the Fiji market in particular, and most of the infrastructure, by that I mean public transport, housing, just the ability for people to move around, and the ability for people to actually get access to power, water, all the basic essential services is a lot easier, and it's available. It's there for people to access. Whereas in PNG, it's much more difficult. So when you employ somebody, you employ them without all of those support mechanisms in place. So when you employ somebody, they may well have finished university, they may well be a graduate, but they may well live in a settlement, or they may well live in the village. So you need to understand that that person has to essentially struggle much more to be able to come to your front door at the office. And so when you say that there are deadlines to meet, you need to then also understand, well, that person may not be able to work from home because they may not have any power, or they may not be able to take their computer home because they don't feel safe carrying on the PMV or the bus. So those are all the factors. So when I say you create an environment in the workplace, one of the things that I always try and do is our working environment is essentially what I call is a safe zone. So when people come through the door at the workplace, they leave all of their troubles at home outside the door. So when they come into our workplace, that is an environment where people are respected, where we care for each other, and when we protect each other in that workplace, so that people are able to function at a higher output, if you like. And I do that because, as I said, outside our door, we're not in control of that. Yeah. In the PNG setting, we're not in control of that. So if we want the best out of our people, we need to create that safe environment where we can.
Yeah, I think that's it's definitely a big thing, because I've had a few positions now over here in Australia, so it is a bit different, but having a job that you like and enjoy and feel safe and comfortable in, versus having a job where you sort of just wake up slowly and then you feel like, oh, I got to go to this thing that I got to do today, which is my job. It's two complete opposites, so building that culture or that space where it makes people feel like they want to actually go to work because they feel safe and they feel comfortable in, makes a big difference.
No, it does. And look, I mean, it's not saying that you don't push people. I mean, you've got to, in that environment, you've also got to challenge people. And so when you provide them with that type of support and freedom, there's also an expectation that they will also be able to operate at the high level as well. And what we then, what I am particularly always pleased to see is when somebody starts to grow through their various roles and grow in their own careers. As I shared with you, Richard, I mean, that's been one of my primary sort of drivers, is to be able to identify people, recruit them, put them through a development program within the companies that we run, and to see that person respond and then to be successful in their own right. And I can see the faces before me. I mean, these are now individuals that we've come into contact with, we've interacted with, who are now senior executives, managers in their own right, many of them sitting on boards now. So that's the legacy that I think I'm most proud of.
Yeah, that's amazing. Going back to your career path and finishing up at SPSN GHD, you were country manager at Newcrest, and now that was a big role in itself. Would have been very challenging, supporting Lihir and their exploration teams, but also overseeing stakeholder programs, which I don't think anywhere else in the world people don't understand how that sort of works with PNG, because you have so many different cultural groups in one area. It's not just one group that's part of the mine. It's 10 or 20 different groups. You're trying to manage them, you're trying to run the business, and then you're also trying to speak to the government. And how did you, I can only imagine it would have been very stressful, but how did you balance sort of operational priorities with community expectations and then government engagement on top of that?
Yeah, look, you're right in saying, I think my time at Newcrest, I joined in it must have been 2011. So as some of these opportunities, I didn't ask for them, but people came and looked for me. And so they said, look, Peter, would you like to come and set up our country office? It was at the time when Newcrest had just, I think it was maybe less than a year since they acquired Lihir. So they bought Lihir, and they were trying to elevate the representation within PNG to a country office. And so I was asked to join them to set up what is now the country office for what was then the country office for Newcrest. That in itself, as you say, brought challenges. Lihir is by world standards a large mine. Its output at its peak was over 900,000 to 1 million ounces of gold. So if you look at that in terms of the gold price, it's a significant mine. And its contribution to Papua New Guinea over the years, it's now been operating, I think, for just under 30 years. And it's a significant contributor to the economy of Papua New Guinea. But as with every mining operations, there are many parts to it. I suppose in some instances, the most easiest part is the actual process itself, where you take the ore bodies. By that I mean you take the ground, and you put it through a process, and you extract gold out of it. And all of that is sort of in a way predictable, because there's a chemical formula to it all that allows you then to manage that process. The most complex is the people. So you have a workforce on Lihir of about 5,000. So 2,500 direct employees, and then another 2,500 contractors and so on that are on the island. So you've got to manage like a little township as well. But thankfully, we had a good general manager. We had several good general managers on Lihir that looked after the on-site operations, and we had a very good and very experienced and capable workforce that were able to sort of manage the different parts of that business. But essentially, it was like running a small town. In terms of the most challenging parts of that role, yes, the landowner management is a major part of it, and it's made more difficult because of the absence of capability and capacity within government. In other jurisdictions, by that I mean other countries, when you are given a license to mine and a contract from the government to mine, essentially in other countries your responsibility is just the operation of the mine. and your responsibilities around, making sure you've got efficient production that allows you to produce and then to pay your taxes and royalties to the state. And so that's the return to the state.
Yep.
And there's a component there which is your either compensation or benefit sharing that goes to the landowners. Mm-hmm. In PNG, it's made more difficult because of a lack of capability within our public service, and in particular around those government departments that are responsible for oversighting or regulating mining activities. And so it requires mining companies to then set up community affairs teams, regulatory teams, and those groups that are able to support the government to manage those types of issues within the mining operations. So it's made much more difficult. So a lot of time spent with our landowners. And look, our landowners are great people, and there are some great leaders within the landowner group. But there are also some not so great leaders within the landowners groups. And so you need to be careful in terms of, those leaders within landowner groups that are working for their own interest. And so you've got to manage that, those types of individuals, while ensuring that the benefits that have been that have been negotiated within the contracts, that those benefits are honoured by the operator, and then are able to then be reported to the communities that are the beneficiaries of those the monies that come from the mining operations. So there's that complexity of that work. The other challenging part of the role is around regulations or the regulatory environment that the mine operates under. Papua New Guinea has gone through a series of reviews of the Mining Act and the kind of commercial arrangements that underpin some of the mining operations within the country. And that creates a level of instability for large operators and just operators in general. Mm-hmm. And so that can cause some difficulties where, we don't know where the goalposts are, as in, by that I mean we, the mining operator, don't know where the goalposts are. So it's very difficult to start to really, make any real significant forward investment plans. And so you're managing on a day-to-day without sort of having an idea about what's going to happen 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Wow. And so that's very difficult because, with these mining operations are a significant, business activity. We're talking about billions of dollars, going into these businesses. So in order for you to get a return, you've got to think 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Yeah. So that was the difficulties of managing that space in my time as Newcrest country manager.
Yeah, wow, that's so interesting. I feel like we can sit here and talk all night about mining in PNG because it's a different can of worms. But look, you also served as senior vice president of the PNG Chamber of Mines and Petroleum. What sort of industry issues required the most advocacy, and what did sort of effective consensus building look like for you?
Yeah. Look, I was privileged to serve as the senior vice president of the PNG Chamber of Mines and Petroleum. Our president was Mr. Gorea Alpi, and the other senior vice president representing the petroleum sector was Mr. Richard Kasman. So between the three of us, I think we made a fairly good team. But the primary thing that the chamber focused on were once again the regulatory space that underpin the success of the sector. So a lot of time was given to the Petroleum Act in terms of the development of the Petroleum Act, or contributing to the development of the Petroleum Act. We also spent a lot of time in the review of the Mining Act, which is still not resolved, but it's still ongoing. Mm-hmm. And so to ensure that the industry's voice was heard, as the government was looking at how to review and how to restructure both acts. And so our work was to represent a voice of the industry to ensure that as the government was considering the changes to both of those acts, that they were able to ensure that PNG was still competitive. It was still a competitive country for investors to consider when they were looking at petroleum or mining activity within the country. The other important initiative which the Chamber supported was the establishment of the EITI, which is the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, and this is a global framework that's been set up, which allows for three parties to come together. One being the government, one being the industry, and the third being civil society. And the EITI framework allows for each of those parties to be able to track the payment of revenues received from the mining sector or the petroleum sector to government. Wow. And so it allows for a process or a reporting mechanism which allows for entities that are operating in either in mining or petroleum. It provides a format of reporting which allows them to report the taxes they pay, the royalties they pay, the landowner payments that they make, compensation payments that they make, and they report that into a template which is then recorded, and then that is made public. So that people are able to see those revenues move from the private sector, the operators, into government. Wow. And civil society is the party that sort of holds both of those entities to account. Yep. So that's how the EITI works. The third element of the work of the Chamber was around the health and safety, in particular the safety practice within our industry. Mm-hmm. And so it worked hard to ensure that the lessons learnt between the different operators was able to be shared. We were able to develop training for our workforce within the resource sector, so that we could operate as safely as possible, given the large scale, the sort of large scale operations that so that the resource sector has to sort of manage. Mm-hmm. So health and safety were one of was the third sort of area of focus for the Chamber.
Okay. And in the middle of all of that as well, you touched on it a bit earlier, but Transparency International, I guess that's been another big thing that you've been quite passionate about, and I know as well, because every year sort of in the news with TI, and we're always following you when you're doing work with them. How important, or I guess from you starting with them a while ago now till now, how important is it for you being a part of something like Transparency International?
Yeah, like Richard, it's my work at TI has been a lifelong commitment. When I was asked by the late Sir Anthony Suguru, our founding chairman of TI, to join the board, I think at that time I probably didn't realise the extent of the work that TI would undertake. Sir Anthony, back in the mid and early 90s, identified corruption as being the major problem for Papua New Guinea, and it still is the case, and it's become worse now. And so my work with TI is a voluntary role. We have a very dedicated team of young Papua New Guineans that lead the work, and they're led by our very capable CEO, Miss Ariane Kasman. And Ariane is our CEO, and she does a fantastic job. And I'm well supported by a board of 12 dedicated Papua New Guineans who are very committed to the work of TI. TI itself, it tries to work through coalitions. And so what we do there is that we look at areas within our state institutions that perhaps could be strengthened, and we try and to engage with these agencies and institutions to look at how we can lend our support and perhaps lend our expertise to strengthening some of their activities and perhaps the way that they carry out their work. The other strength of TI is that coalition within the community. So we're able to mobilise public advocacy on significant issues and important national issues. And through that advocacy, we're able to hold government to some degree of accountability. The challenging thing is, the challenge for us though, is that we have a very weak governance system within the country at the moment. And unfortunately, politics has infiltrated much of our government mechanisms.
Yep.
So it takes a significant amount of work to be able to restore this, but we remain hopeful that there is some, there are some shining lights there, which we want to continue to sort of progress.
Yeah, but what's your vision for TI, and where do you see it going, say in 10, 20 years time? Will it be on another level, in a different area, or do you have any visions or plans for TI?
Well, my dream is to put TI out of business in 20 years. Because if we can do that, then that means we would have dealt with corruption.
Yes. Yeah.
Because TI exists only because there's corruption in the country. If our country was corruption free, then we know we're for TI, and that's my dream, to get to that point. Yeah. The immediate focus, though, over the next sort of 2 to 5 years, is really to try and to lend our support to fixing up our electoral system.
Yeah.
And so that's the work of TI has done for the last 20 years now, is to focus on strengthening the electoral system, because in my view, our electoral system. Mm-hmm. Let me start that again. Our electoral system is the foundation of our democracy, and so as a result, our citizens, when they cast their vote, it's an important exercise, because by casting their vote, they are then electing those individuals who will represent their voice in Parliament. And it's so important because in Parliament is where they make the laws. So if you get the wrong person into Parliament, then we get what we get. We get wrong laws. We get people undermining our democracy by creating laws which are favourable for certain people. And so that's really the work of TI, is to strengthen the electoral system, is to work with government as best we can to try and bring forward reform within our electoral system, so that we can have essentially one person, one vote. Mm-hmm. We can have a counting or a system which has greater degrees of integrity, where voters can be identified, where they can freely cast their vote, where their vote can be then counted, independently, without any kind of sort of manipulation.
Yeah.
And those that have voted in Parliament have been done so in a honest and fair manner. And so that's the work of TI.
Yeah, I think TI is doing great things for the country, and I mean we'll do our own bit here on the Uncles and try and have these sorts of conversations to bring corruption to light, because I think it's such a big thing, and for so long now, people, over the last 50 years, you just sort of go with the flow and no one sort of brings up or talks about it, or it's this thing where, it's okay. It's just PNG passing, as we say, get on with it. But I think for the next 50, there needs to be open conversations about this. And I know there is another podcast out there that is talking about this openly. So we're going to do our part to have the right people on to discuss these sorts of issues. But going back to your career at a time, probably more recently before COVID, you stepped into the Group CEO role at Credit Corporation PNG, and my belief was that they sort of brought you on board to, I guess, stabilize the business, but also help it, I guess, go to the next level. What was that like for you, going back into that banking area again, and did it bring back some memories, and what was that experience like?
Well, I think I went the full circle. I started off as a banking and finance person, and in a way I finished off my career as a CEO for a credit corporation. But you're right. I mean, look, it was a very enjoyable period. Also challenging because this credit corporation had gone through a few changes. Credit corporation essentially was a finance company, a fairly significant Papua New Guinean finance company, with representation through the region. It had branches in Fiji, Vanuatu, Solomons, and so it was a significant finance company. But it had gone through a period where it was transitioning. The founder of Credit Corporation was a gentleman called Garth McElwain. And so Garth had just left the organisation. They had a long-serving CEO who also left the organisation, and so it was going through a little bit of a difficult period. And they'd had appointed, I think, one or two CEOs previously, and it hadn't worked out. And so when they approached me to take on the CEO role, it was with that in mind, is to try and bring some stability to the company, to be able to reset the strategy for the company in terms of where it would, what the future direction of that company would be. And it was also there to try and perhaps instill some confidence within the market about the Credit Corporation and in particular around its shareholders as well. So the focus for me at Credit Corporation was to try and establish that new strategy, which we undertook, and it led us down the path of becoming a bank, which my successor Danny Robinson has now made that happen. So as you know, Credit Corporation is now Credit Bank, and it's well positioned to becoming one of Papua New Guinea's leading banks. And so that itself, I think, is a recognition of that initial work that we did in that transition period between between the finance company to where it is now as a bank. Yeah. In terms of the shareholder space, that continues to sort of develop. The larger shareholders for Credit Corporation are our superannuation companies, our superannuation funds, and so it's important that Credit Corporation is successful so it can continue to return dividends to our superannuation funds, and that in turn flows to the members that represent a lot of hardworking Papua New Guineans. So it's important that we do that right.
Yeah, and I guess more so, recently in your career, after finishing up from Credit Corp, you've held a lot of board positions with Transparency International, PNG, Steamships, PNGFM, as you said, Me Bank, but also PNG Property Developers Association. What sort of, common governance gaps do you see in those PNG organizations, and how do you close them?
Yeah, look, I think going back to my earlier point, companies are made by people. So, you can get all your operating systems that are online and digital, whatever else, but ultimately, in our current state, people run the company. Okay, so, and that applies also, and the integrity of those people is key to the success of an organisation, particularly those that are either dealing with public funds or are publicly listed companies. By that I mean they're on the stock exchange or have shareholding. Yeah. And so the integrity of, for instance, when we talk about governance, it really relies on the integrity of the board of each of these companies, because the board essentially has the responsibility to set the governance tone within these types of entities or these companies. And so it's really the approach you take or the way that you identify and recruit your board members It's the expertise and experience of those board members, but most importantly, it's the integrity of those board members. That allows you then, that allows you then to set the tone in terms of the governance climate within the organisation. So from the board, it then sets the expectations about to the executives and the management of that company, and that then flows down in terms of the culture that you build within your business.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very interesting. To finish off, because we've gone over an hour now, but is there anything you'd like to share for young people who are in different jobs, whether it's in banking, whether it's in engineering, and they're sort of, mid-tier, mid-level, but they've got that feeling in them that, they've got leadership qualities and they feel like they can really make a mark in their company, but they just haven't been given the right opportunity or haven't been given the right moment to voice their concern or take the next step. What would be your advice to them trying to get into those leadership opportunities or positions? Sorry.
Okay. Look, I think, when you start off in your career, sometimes you don't know where your end point will be or your destination will be. And some people sort of go along and they wake up when they're 40 and they wonder what's happened. I like to plan, and so what we generally do is I do 5-year plans, 5-year cycle plans. And so my encouragement for our people is to think about that. Do a bit of a stock take. Where am I now? And where do I want to be in 5 years' time? If I could do so, what would be my dream career? What do I see myself around in my dream career? What do I see doing? What kind of experiences or expertise, qualifications would I like to achieve? Because once you start to vision that, then at least it starts to direct your mind into those streams. That's the first step. But the second most important step is to then take the action in order for you to realize the dream. Because these are the things that challenges us most. We can all dream.
Yep.
But in between that visioning and realizing your dream, there's a lot of hard work that needs to take place. Yeah. And so once you've made that decision in terms of where you want to be in 5 to 10 years, then that starts the work of identifying your pathways to get there. So if it's about qualifications, okay, what kind of qualifications do I need in order for me to realize that? If it's about networks, okay, what kind of networks do I need to build in order for me to get there? If it's about my experience, what kind of pathways do I need to get in order for me to develop that experience, which then supplements or supports my qualifications in order for me to get there? And then the most important thing is the environment around you, okay? At that point, you may be single. That means you need to organise your time. Okay, do you go drinking with your mates? Do you play sport? Do you sleep? What do you do? You make the choice. Okay, so if it's about one of those three that I spoke about, experience, network, or education, think about how you allocate your time for those three if you're single. If you're married and you have a family, that creates another level of complexity because you've got kids to look after, you've got a spouse to look after, so you need to then have that conversation with your spouse to be able to ensure that you're managing your limited time around achieving that dream. And so you put that in place as well. For your network, I was very fortunate to be involved in establishing what is now the Badili Club.
Yes.
And so the Badili Club started congregating back in the early 90s, 92, 93, and it was formalised in 1997. So that is, 26 years ago.
Yeah.
26 years ago. And the reason we set up the Badili Club was exactly what you asked, the question you asked, Richard. It was about a point where you come to a point in your career where you come to where you come and you bang up against a glass ceiling. So you think you're doing okay, but those promotional opportunities aren't coming, and you wonder, why aren't they coming? You know, I've gone through each of these sort of, roles. I understand the business. I'm intelligent enough. I've got the qualifications now, but why aren't I breaking through those glass ceilings? And in most cases, in small markets like PNG, it comes down to the kind of contacts and networks that you have, which then allows people to get to know you so that they have the confidence in you in order for you to promote you. Yeah. And so that's where the Biduli Club was set up. And essentially it was a response to those middle to senior managers, Papua New Guinea managers, who weren't getting through that glass ceiling, and they weren't also getting access to some of the existing networks that were there. Yeah. And so the idea that I had was that, look, if we can't break into those networks, let's create our own. And so that's what took us down the path of creating the Biduli Club. And I say now, I look back and I can claim some success for the Biduli Club, because if you look at the list of ambassadors and club members now, we sit on all the major boards. So that in itself, I think, is an indication of the success we've had. But my advice to young people in middle or senior manager roles now, reach out. And as I said, think about how you break up your time and how you dedicate it, so how you start to plan your career path and commit yourself to that hard work that will result in you being recognised for the qualities that you have.
No, that's very insightful there, guys, and I'm sure everyone would appreciate that advice you've given to them. But from the uncles, just want to say a big thank you for coming on again and doing part 2 with us. There's going to be a part 3 down the track, but we'll have you again when you're ready. But before we finish off, it's always a funny thing, but I think whenever someone shares their word of the week, it's sort of it plays out in the episode, and I think the key word for us throughout this whole episode is perseverance, and especially with that advice there, looking for what you should do, organizing your time, getting it set, and you have to have perseverance in the back of your mind. So thank you once again, Dad, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Richard. It's been a pleasure.